Welcome to PHP Podcast. I'm Mike.
And this is Orlando, and we're here for another Monday minisode.
Yeah, Monday minis are where we get the opportunity to kind of dive deep into one subject. So on our podcast, on our normal hour plus podcast, we cover a lot of things. We're kind of doing the whole gambit. We're going over reselling news, what's going on with us. Maybe we focus on a topic and we cover lots of things. But today on our Monday minisodes, we focus on one thing, a little bit shorter. You can kind of digest it. It's like the Reader's Digest version of PHP Podcast.
Do people even know what Reader's Digest is anymore?
I don't know. Maybe.
Okay.
I barely even know what it is.
All right, so this one I thought was super important because we get a lot of people that, ask us about reselling on Whatnot. Is it worth it? What's been your experience? And I myself have done several Whatnot auctions. Mike's hopped on there too. And we thought it was pretty important. And what really got me going about, should we talk about this was I had posted on how I had sold some Harley shirts on Whatnot, and I would have sold them on Whatnot, not on Whatnot, on eBay. And had I sold them on Whatnot, I probably would have, sold them for $5 to $10. But on eBay, I was able to sell them for $35 and $42. So then I'm like, okay, I just wonder, if Whatnot is worth it. And so a lot of people jumped on to the Instagram, and it was like all kinds of comments. Like one is like, yeah, the big YouTube resellers, they can sell, an oil rag for $20, LOL. And the other one was like, yeah, I sell on Whatnot, but it's generally like low price items. And other people are like, yeah, I do really well on Whatnot. It's been pretty good. I sell vintage toys and it's gone well. So wanted to talk about what you need to succeed on Whatnot. And I say this based on my own experience and being on Whatnot for now, it's been about 6 months or so. I'm not an expert. I know other people that have been there for over a year, but good friends of mine that have also given me a ton of feedback to the process, and I've watched their journey. And so I think we're at a place that we can actually talk about this a little bit. So the first thing is, I do believe to be successful in Whatnot, you either have to have a huge following or you have to have top tier items. Yeah. It has to be one or the other.
Yeah, and even having top tier items might not be enough if you're not driving people to your store. So one of the things that's useful, if you got a top tier item, you throw it on eBay, it's getting all the eyes. It's going to be on there until the right buyer finds it. If you are going on to Whatnot and you're selling it and you're hoping, okay, I got this item that's going to sell, unless you start the listing price really, really, really high, something you're accepting.
You have to be careful.
Yeah. It could end up getting sniped from you, and you might only have 3 or 4 people watching your Whatnot sale when it's happening. And so the hard thing is you got to get people to your auction. You've got to get people actually there willing to buy at the time you're doing the sell. And that's why having a huge following is very beneficial. If you're a YouTuber or you're on Instagram and you've got 100,000 followers and you got just tons of interaction, it's easy to say, hey, I'm doing this Whatnot live auction, and to drive a lot of your followers and listeners and viewers over there to that spot. And like you said, there are going to be people who are going to be selling stuff for significantly higher prices than they would if they weren't a popular person, because people want to be able to say
they want to connect with the,
I bought this from so-and-so, or to be able to have that connection, maybe be able to message back and forth. And, there's that feeling of like almost like being starstruck. I mean, we felt like that when we went to eBay Open and we saw some of the resellers. So it's like, man, like we've watched you for years, and I get to meet you and talk to you now, and it's really cool. And so if you're like, hey, I've been watching this person, I've learned a bunch. Maybe even people like, hey, I want to support this person, I've learned a lot from them. So
and some of you do that. I had somebody just buy a buckle from me on eBay, and I'm like, what interested you in this buckle? And they're like, I just wanted to support you guys.
And that's cool. Yeah.
So it happens.
So if you've got the following, you can drive people over there. But I was going to think, like, if you're just, I don't want to say a nobody because you're somebody, but if you're like not known in a community and have a huge following, and you go over and you get accepted to have a Whatnot and you start a live auction, it's going to be hard to drive people there because you almost have to bring your own following.
I would say do not sell your top tier items right away unless you have, good following. And so that leads kind of like the second thing. You have to be consistent on Whatnot to be successful. So if you're a big YouTuber and you have a huge following, it's going to be a lot faster, the pace at where you can sell items at a good price. But if you're not, so you'll see a lot of YouTubers that have, maybe, 1,000 subscribers or less, and they talk about their experience at Whatnot. And, they'll talk about how they gained a following, but they were doing auctions once a week, twice a week, 3 times a week. And over time, as they were able to, get a lot of people into their lives, then they could get the bidding wars going on and they could sell for good money. So it's going to take a little bit more. So you have to either leverage your popularity or your following, or you have to leverage your time and be consistent in what you have. Now, the third thing is you need to be able to find low cost inventory, right? Because if you're not going to be selling it for a high price, you're going to have to find something where it's worth it for you to spend selling.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of that grind. And I never did this with eBay. Luckily, I didn't have to. But a lot of it's metrics based, right? So if you get a couple of line ads in a category, or if you're trying to get to that top rated seller and you need to sell a certain amount of items, and you're like, I just need to get there so I get the protections and I get that stamp, and I'll be able to have, if you're a new seller and you're like, you don't have any reviews yet, people might not take you seriously. Mm-hmm. So there is a method of saying, hey, I'm just going to go to Target or wherever, and I'm going to buy a whole bunch of the game Uno. I used this example before, that's why I'm using it. And I'm basically going to sell it at cost. I'm going to break even, maybe even lose 50 cents per sale, but I'm going to get 100 sales over the next couple of weeks just so that I can get like that going and get some reviews and get some positive feedback of, hey, fast shipping and all of those things. You almost have to do that when you're first starting out with Whatnot too. You got to be willing to say, I'm selling things. It's okay if I'm barely making any profit on what I'm selling, but I'm doing this in order to get the following. I'm doing this in order to get people into my store, to see that I'm selling items, to see that I'm getting pushed up in the algorithm, that when people are like current lives, mine is going to be closer to the top as opposed to at the bottom because nobody's ever watched any of my lives. So you might have to do the grind of selling things for cheaper than you would normally sell them, be willing to do that in order to build that following. And that's like the cost of doing business in a lot of things. A lot of times when you're building that reputation, I think of something like if you're a photographer, you're just learning, you're trying to build your client base, you might be doing free shoots for a while. You might be doing really, really discounted shoots so you can build that portfolio, get that word of mouth going. And then all of a sudden you can start charging more because people are like, I love your work. My friend used you, all of those things. And it takes a little while to get to that point. And so I think that could be Whatnot grind too, is you got to be consistent. You got to be willing to sell low price items, or at least low cost items for you, right? You got it. So you're not worried about, hey, I sold this hat for $15 and, it stinks because maybe I could have got made more for it. But if you picked it up for 50 cents.
Yeah. And that's the thing. I see a lot of the people that are successful are people that go to the bins, or people that get liquidation pallets, or they have connections to wholesalers. Or the other side, some of the bigger YouTubers, they're willing to take $1 or $2 margins on each item they sell, and they sell in huge volume. Right. So those are things you have to think about. You have to manage that. And along with that is time. Whatnot does take time. Right. The beauty of what I love about eBay is it's not like it used to be where it's like listen and forget it, but it still is. Right. So I can, go source at a garage sale, and, I could have everything possibly listed in the next couple of days and I'm good to go. For the Whatnot auction, though, I have to take pictures within the app. Right. I have to put some kind of description. Right. And then I have to also allot that time for the selling. Right. It could be an hour, it could be 2 hours, it could be 30 minutes, whatever it is, where, once you list it on eBay, that's it. Right. Now you're just waiting for somebody to buy it. Where on Whatnot, it does take a lot of time. And then after, it's going to take a lot of time shipping. So I encourage you guys to go on YouTube and watch a lot of the smaller Whatnot sellers, because a lot of them do a great job of breaking down what is their hourly pay when they do Whatnot. Right. So, for example, on eBay, if you're making $300 a day and you're maybe spending, I don't know, let's say 4 hours doing eBay, right, which is pretty great. You're making a little bit over $70 an hour. Right. But on Whatnot, right, you're trying to make $300. You might be spending, an hour to sourcing, an hour to listing it, an hour to, being on Whatnot. And then you got the hour to shipping. You're going to be making half of that amount for the same amount of time. All right. So you need to be careful. And so you need to be able to make sure you have time if you want to do Whatnot.
That's right.
And do you want to bring on?
Yeah. Our last one is you got to be able to organize. So Whatnot's going to be a little bit different in a lot of ways. When you're doing something live, you need to, one, have everything ready to go. It'd be really awkward if you're like, hold on really quick, and you leave and you got to go find the thing and it's taking you a long time and people are leaving your live. So you got to have stuff ready to go. You got to have it in the order that you've got it set up on your auctions to go. Otherwise, you're spending time. Wait, let me find this listing. And you need to also then be organized afterwards. Maybe you did 30 items. Of those 30 items, 15 of them sold. So you got to have organized which ones sold, which ones need to pack. Do I have the packing stuff ready? Because one of the things is if you're selling those things, you need to be ready to ship them pretty much right away. So if you're listing items and you realize, wait a minute, I don't have the boxes for these items. I don't have the shipping stuff for this size item, or, I sold 7 hats, but I don't really have boxes for hats. Well, then you put yourself in a bad position. So you really want to be
organized. You're spending more time.
Yeah, you're spending more time. So be prepared to sell everything that's going to go and really set up your live. And I would suggest do a couple practice runs, even if it's not on the Whatnot app, but just set up your camera and press record and practice using an app and moving things around and talking at the same time and looking at a camera and holding something up. Because that's another thing too, is if you're not prepared and you haven't practiced that, it can be awkward talking in front of a camera and doing those things. So you want to be organized. You want to be ready to go. And especially if you're not used to talking in front of a camera live in front of people selling stuff, if you're then digging for items because you're not organized, it can become really frustrating.
I forgot who it was. I think it might have been North Carolina Flipper. I think somebody had mentioned that one of the struggles of Whatnot is that everybody that goes on Whatnot has to become Billy Mays.
That's right.
It's a home shopping network, but for resellers is what he said.
So I've got here a water bottle. Now you see this water bottle.
No, that's exactly what you're doing. Yeah. And you're showing all the angles and you're trying to keep the conversation in the chat like it's in Instagram Live. Like, yeah, that's the other thing you need to be successful. Like you have to be able to carry it.
Yep.
Right. So we believe Whatnot can be pretty successful. There's just, you got to implement a lot of these things, right? You got to get a following going, whether you already have one or you build one. You got to have the right items. You have to be consistent. You should be able to make it profitable, whether that means low cost or high volume. You have to find the time. You have to be able to organize, and you have to be able to sell it.
That's right.
So hopefully all of you, if you haven't jumped on Whatnot, check it out. Go on there and check it out. We're not paid by Whatnot at all, but Whatnot, we're also willing to be sponsored. So check us out. And with that being said, make sure to be real,
be relevant,
and be reselling. Late.
Peace.